Welcome to another video. Hope everyone's doing alright and that. Today we're going to be tackling an aeroplane, and it's going to be this thing, the 1/48 scale Messerschmitt from Airfix. It was my birthday model, come from my mate Darren, who's sort of responsible for all this model malarkey and that. He bought us a Spitfire a couple of years ago, which kicked things off and that, and fantastic. I went on to build a Lancaster bomber what I got off him. That was a good model to build. And a 1/48 Spitfire about 6 months ago, book I'd done. That was fantastic, but I haven't done a plane for a while, so it'll be interesting to see if I'm any better at them. So right, let's get out of the box, see what I'm dealing with, and see this Messerschmitt come together. Right, this is everything that come in the box. My first impressions is it doesn't look too bad, you know. Everything survived on the sprues, so there's no bits falling around in the bags and that. This one looks a little bit intimidating with all the tiny parts, so I'm going to be taking my time. Hopefully not losing many in that. But my plan is to creep my way through it, probably in 2 videos, get as much glued up as I possibly can. I am going to try and stick to their colour schemes as close as I can. I'm aware there's 3 different models in this box, so there's 3 different variants and there is slightly different parts. In the past I've gone down rabbit holes where I've built the wrong model with the wrong parts and that, so I'm going to be paying attention to that. This is the instructions, just a plain old air, black and white affair and that. I have downloaded them from Scalemates, so I can zoom in a bit better and that. I find this one a lot clearer. I'm going to be trying to stick to their colour schemes as much as I possibly can with the colours I've got, and hopefully I get it pretty close. We'll have a little look at the details before we get going, because I tell you what, some of these are absolutely minute. Look at the size of them. These are going to put these glasses to the test on this one for sure, but they're absolutely minute. I'm not going to say I'm going to get 100% of these, but I'm going to try my best to get as many as I can. And yeah, fantastic. So right, it's enough gassing on. Put your feet up, kick back, and let's get into it. Fantastic. Right, I think I'm going to leave this part of the video here. I think I'm about halfway, and so far so good. I'm not going to get too cocky, but I think this could end up being, if not the best, one of the best models I've ever put together. I paid attention to taking me time, and I've only been doing a couple of hours on an evening and that. And I tell you what, it's coming out absolutely fantastic. Spent a lot of time in the cockpit detailing that out. I got all the transfers on. I have broke a little piece of glass off when I masked it up to do the engine. But I'm going to put that back in at the end because it's going to have to be masked up again anyway, and I'll probably end up breaking it again. But yeah, fantastic. I did have a go at the pilot. Even he's come out better than normal. Look at that. Fantastic. I tell you what, these are really hard to paint, like really hard to paint. But I'm pretty pleased with how he's come out. I've got his seat belts on and that, his little buckle, his hands and that. I detailed the engine bay out because I think you can have this open or closed. I'm going to try and get it open and put it on display. But in part 2, I'm going to try and get it all painted up nicely and that. Hopefully everything continues in the same vein and it doesn't start fighting us and that. And yeah, fantastic. So if you like the video, hit likes, hit subscribes, do all the YouTubey stuff for us. And I'll see you on the next one.